Okay.
Okay, we're recording.
All right. Hello, and welcome to our intercultural troubleshooting presentation. I'm Jonathan Oates.
I'm Lauren Beatty.
I'm Robert Salas.
I'm Brianna Almaguer.
And I'm Zari Chipman.
Today, we'll be going over a conflict between two companies of differing cultures. In this presentation, we'll talk about the conflict itself, the cultures involved, the stakes, the solution, and the plan of action. But before we get into that, we want to go over one key point. And that key point is intercultural competency is becoming increasingly important in today's global workplace. One way to improve this is through intercultural negotiation. And according to Cheney and Martin, it is the discussions of common and conflicting interests between persons of different cultural backgrounds who work to reach an agreement of mutual benefit. Now that we have those, we'll go to the conflict with Bree.
So I'm going to be covering the conflict. The conflict starts when a Canadian company sends two associates to Kyoto, Japan for a week to work out a business deal. This company sent James, who's the male president, and Kelly, who's a young female marketing director. During the first meeting, the businessmen give full attention to James. However, when Kelly is presenting, they are responding to texts and emails, but they nod throughout her presentation. After the first day, Kelly expressed her concerns to James that the Japanese businessmen were being sexist and rude towards her. James then brings up Kelly's concerns to the Japanese businessmen, but they laugh it off and kind of ignore the issue. They have two more meetings that go similarly, where the Japanese businessmen are engaged with James, but not quite as engaged with Kelly. During the third day, Kelly snaps and she yells at the Japanese businessmen and walks out of the meeting. The businessmen view Kelly's outbursts as over emotional and unnecessary. And they say that they don't want to work with a Canadian company anymore if all of their employees are going to be this overly emotional. So this is an issue between two cultures, the Japanese and the Canadian, who have different cultural views on gender roles, respect, and much more, like Robert will get into in just a moment. This conflict between the companies puts the business deal at risk and ripples into other issues, like forming biases towards the opposing cultures. Now both companies have to figure out whether they want to continue working together and how to resolve this intercultural conflict.
The conflict is intercultural because it's between two different cultures. The cultures involved are the Canadian and Japanese business cultures. The parties that are directly involved in this conflict are James Cameron, the president of the Canadian company, Kelly Van Houten, the marketing director of the Canadian company, the male associates of the Japanese production company in Kyoto, and both the Canadian and Japanese companies. Canadians have a fairly equal representation of men and women in the workplace and in powerful positions. In Japan, women are highly visible, but the majority of women hold lower level positions. Cheney and Martin said, because the Japanese power structure has always been dominated by men, women do not have a chance to be better represented in powerful positions. Kelly is a female marketing director, which would be uncommon in Japan. The cultural difference between Japan and Canada affects how they view women in the workplace. Another cultural difference is how the cultures perceive eye contact. In Canada, maintaining direct eye contact is seen as respectful and shows you are paying attention. McDaniel said, if someone avoids eye contact, they may be seen as unfriendly, untrustworthy, and disrespectful. However, in Japan, prolonged eye contact is considered rude, disrespectful, and even threatening. Additionally, the Japanese may look away and close their eyes when someone is speaking as an indication that they are listening and actually giving attention to the speaker. During Kelly's presentation, the Japanese associates were not making eye contact and were multitasking, which Kelly viewed as disrespectful. While Canadian culture is monochronic, meaning they focus on one thing at a time, Japan is predominantly polychronic, meaning they focus on multiple things at once. Furthermore, Canada is an individualistic culture, while Japan is collectivist culture. Japan's society places great importance on maintaining social harmony as it is beneficial for the whole of society. Due to their collectivist culture, many Japanese people will mask their negative feelings. Therefore, Kelly's outburst of negative emotion was not received well by the Japanese businessmen. Now, Kyrie will talk about the stakes of the conflict.
The stakes of the conflict affect both the companies and the individuals. The implications for companies is the loss of business deal, which will have a domino effect because it will cause loss of revenue, decreased sales, and decreased employee benefits. They would risk losing their negotiation deal, profit, and any future business deals and products offered by the Canadian or the Japanese company. Then, loss of other businesses because of a misunderstanding of reputation will also play a part in the stakes of the conflict. The reputation of the Japan and Canadian companies will affect their business relationship with each other and vice versa. Potential future for an intercultural conflicts. So not solving this conflict and having global competencies can result in future intercultural conflicts for the companies with other foreign businesses. Then the implications for individuals is the further lack of intercultural competency between the Japan and Canadian cultures. Potential job loss will affect the individuals also and prevent them from any promotions or other job offers. It will also negatively affect their personal relationships and business relationships between the two cultures and the individuals. And now I will pass it over to Lauren.
Our solution is to engage in an intercultural negotiation, which will address the initial miscommunication between the Japanese business associates and Kelly. And in doing so, we'll educate each party on the differing cultures of the two companies and will further guide them in resolving the conflict by helping them to form compromises and improve their global competencies. So our plan of action is to hold the negotiation in Kyoto, as both of our companies are already in Kyoto. And according to Cheney and Martin, the Japanese feel more comfortable in their own homes. So holding it in Kyoto would likely be more comfortable for the Japanese businessmen. And we will also be wearing formal business attire. So in first addressing the gender roles, women's presence in the workplace is different in Japan and Canada. So for Kelly, your position as a marketing director would likely not be held by a woman in Japan. It would likely be held by a man. And this is in no means discriminatory, but gender and age and authority are very much important in Japanese society. They are highly respectful towards authority. And so your high position and your young age are likely what's kind of affecting the Japanese and having them, the Japanese businessmen, and affecting their response towards your presentation. Again, it is by no means on a discriminatory basis. It is just the cultural norms of Japan. On the same token, other cultures do have women in high positions in the workplace. And this is the case in Kelly's position as a marketing director. So being aware of that is going to help everybody to accommodate to cultural norms and help you out in any further foreign negotiations. So for eye contact, Kelly, in Japan, eye contact is actually seen as disrespectful and rude and even threatening. Japanese school children are actually taught that when someone of authority is speaking, they're to look towards the neck tie region, out of respect. And so a lot of Japanese people will actually turn away and close their eyes to show that they're listening to you and being attentive. In Canada, of course, eye contact shows attentiveness and it shows respect, and a lack of it is seen as disrespectful or inattentive or untrustworthy. So, Kelly, your interpretation of the Japanese businessmen's eye contact is natural, but we'd like to inform you that it is actually a misunderstanding of their cultural norms. So they likely were giving you attention and being respectful to you. And of course, we'd also like to address the notion of understanding of time. So, Kelly, in your case, Canada is a monochronic culture, so you like to focus on one thing at a time. However, in Japan, they are polychronic, meaning they focus on multiple things at once. That is likely why the Japanese businessmen were multitasking and on their cell phones during your presentation. It is just a cultural norm, and it's no indication of inattentiveness. That is just how they do it. For the Japanese businessmen, we would like you guys to try to pay attention to that. It can be seen as inattentive or rude or like you're not interested, and that's likely why Kelly is upset about it. Of course, we know that this entire misunderstanding is on a basis of not understanding each other's cultures and that no party here meant any disrespect. We'd also like to address the cultures. So Kelly, Japan is a very collectivist culture. This means that their focus is primarily on social harmony. Many times Japanese people will actually mask their negative emotions to maintain face and maintain that social harmony. So your outburst, while that is understandable, we can understand your frustration, that would not be appropriate in Japanese business culture. It's seen as inappropriate, overly emotional, and we would definitely advise you to keep your emotions in check and not express them outwardly, as the Japanese businessmen will likely interpret that negatively. So we would like to offer some compromise. Kelly, one option is for you to allow James to do some of your presentation. For the sake of your business deal, that might be a good option, because the Japanese businessmen would likely pay attention a little bit more obviously, because that's what they would be used to. It would be a male, older gentleman presenting to them. We totally understand if you would prefer to continue your part, but we would suggest being accommodating to their business etiquette and understanding that if they're not maintaining eye contact or if they're on their cell phones, that is just their cultural norm and it is no way disrespectful to you in intentions. And for the Japanese businessmen, we would suggest limiting your multitasking and cell phone use, because not only can it be perceived as inattentive or rude, it can also be quite distracting to the Canadian associates that are trying to present because they would not be used to it. So these are our compromises. And if you have any questions, we definitely would be more than happy to help out.
In all, the situation occurred due to a lack of intercultural competency. With improved cultural intelligence and global competencies, we can improve that intercultural competency and prevent future miscommunications. Thank you.